In this episode of Shortcuts Lot Classroom, I'm going to walk you through putting together a simple gatefold card base. Now we're going to build upon the things that we learned in video 1, and we're going to focus a lot on using the X and Y axis to give you control over where and how you place various elements in the design. I'll also share some design tips to help you be more accurate and precise when you do your own designing. Let's jump right into it.
All right, video 2 of making a card from scratch. I thought it'd be a cool idea to put together a simple gatefold with a half circle extending off of one of the sides that you can add another circle that's kind of inset with a print and cut caption. Now we're not going to do the print and cut caption, we're going to focus on the card because it's kind of a lot and I don't want to do too much. So let's go over here. We're going to start off by drawing a rectangle. So we're going to select this one here. Okay. This is the draw a shape option. Press and hold. If you don't have the rectangle there, go ahead and select the rectangle and click and just drag a box. Doesn't matter what the size is. We're going to actually type in the value manually anyway. Okay. So let's release. And there it is. We're going to grab our selection tool. It's right here. Okay. And over here, under position and size, we're going to change the width to 10 inches since it's 5 by 7. So the width needs to be 10 because we're going to add score marks for the folds. But if you take a 5 by 7 and open it up, it's 10 inches wide. Now we're going to take and change the height to 7 and press enter. Now, if that's not working for you, make sure that your keep proportions is unchecked. All right, so here it is. Now, we're actually going to use the X and Y axis to help us place our score lines. All right, so make sure that under position and size, this little red indicator here under relative position is set to the top left. And what I want you to do is for the X axis, type in 0 and press enter. And for the Y axis, press or type 0 and press enter. And what that's going to do is put the card base in the top left corner at the 0, 0, XY axis. Okay, so now you know that gatefolds, they open from the center, and each side has the same distance. So typically, if we're going to make this a standard card, the score mark would be at the 5-inch mark. But since it's a gatefold, what we're going to do is we're going to take 5 and divide it in half, which is 2.5. So we need one of the score marks at the 2.5 mark, and the other one is going to be 2.5 plus 5, which is 7.5. So what we need to do first is create our score line, which we've done in the previous lesson. I'm trying to build on things that we've already done. Grab your draw tool on the left-hand side, click, and then anywhere on the mat, I'm doing it over here in the yellow area so you can see it a little bit better. You're going to click once, and you can see that we've created a node. Now it's swinging freely, so we want to hold down Shift so that it doesn't swing freely. It'll be nice and straight. Bring it down to just about the width of the card or the length of the card, and click again. And release your Shift key. And now we've got one more node that wants to go down, but we're not going to do that. We're going to hit Escape. And now we have a solid line. Now remember, let's go in here and let's name our layers. This layer here, if we turn on and off the eyeball, you'll see that that is our card base. Click anywhere in this gray area to bring up the layer properties window and type card base and press enter. This one, if we select it here, you can see it's clearly the score line. Double click on where it says path and let's type in score line. Okay, so with scoreline selected, we need to go up here and change the height to 7 inches. We want it perfectly at 7. So type in 7, make sure keep proportions is unchecked. Type in 7, hit enter, and there you go. Okay, now we're going to need 2 of these. So you go ahead and make sure that scoreline is selected. Go to edit, copy, and then edit, paste. We want the inside of the card to be 5 inches wide, which leaves us with 5 inches to play with on both sides. Now, if we take that 5 inches that we have left, now let me actually just illustrate this real quick. Let me just draw another square here. and I'm going to make this 5 inches. We're not going to do anything with this. I'm just using this to demonstrate. Okay, so let's just say that part there, this right here, is the inside of the card, which leaves these 2 gatefolds, and you can tell here that they're 2.5 each. Okay, you can also, let me delete that. You can also take 5 and divide it by 2, which is 2.5. So I'm going to take scoreline 1 here, and I'm going to move this over to the X position 2.5 and the Y position 0. And then I'm going to take scoreline 2, and I need to move this, and I need to set the second scoreline at 5 plus 2.5, which is 7.5 on the X. And on the Y, set that to 0. And you have your gatefold, okay? Now, I am not going to do anything with this just yet. You can group it if you want. Now remember, if you want solid score lines, you can leave it as is. If you want perforated lines, grab your selection tool, make sure you select your score line here, and under the fill and stroke option, change your line style to whichever score line you want. I'm just going to do these, okay? I'll do the same thing by selecting score line 2, and I'll change it to that one. So now I have perforated score lines. I'm going to lock all of these just for now so I don't move anything. Now the next thing I'm going to do is go over here under draw a shape and select a circle, okay? Now I'm going to press and hold, and you can see that it's creating an ellipse and it's just really free floating. I'm going to hold down my shift key as I drag this circle, and it's going to keep it in proportion, okay? And I'm just going to let it go, doesn't matter what size. And there's my circle. I'm going to double click under layers here and just name it so we know what's what. Grab my selection tool, select the circle. I'm going to go under position and size with keep proportions checked. I'm going to change that to 3 inches. I want the circle to be 3 inches, okay? Now, what I need to do is create another line so I can find the center point of the circle, okay? So I'm going to go back to my draw tool, okay? And I'm just going to draw a small line, click to begin the line, hold down shift so it's straight, and then release your shift. Okay, after that second click, you release your shift, and now it wants to make another one, but we're going to hit escape. So now we have another line, and I'm going to grab my selection tool just to make sure I'm selecting the line. There it is. And I want the height of the line the same as the height of the circle, which is 3 inches. Okay, so now I have a 3-inch circle and a 3-inch line. I'm going to call this the circle line. I'm going to hold down shift and make sure to select the circle line and the circle so they're both selected at the same time. Now another way of doing that is with your selection tool selected by clicking and dragging a selection box around both. Okay, so there's 2 ways of doing that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go over here under position and size, and we're going to make sure that under the horizontal and vertical align, we have 2 selections selected, and we're going to align it horizontally in the middle and vertically in the middle. Okay, so now I have a circle with a line in the center so I know where the center point is. I'm going to go ahead and select these 2. I'm going to right click and I'm going to group them so that no matter where I click, they will stay together. Okay, now what we're going to do is with this selected, okay, so now let me double click on this. This group is we'll call this the circle group. I just changed the name so I know what I'm looking at here. Take the circle, bring it over, and align that center line with the edge of the card. Okay, and now under layers, hold down the circle, select the circle, hold down shift, and select the card base. Okay, so now we have the circle and the card base selected, and we want 2 selections selected here under position and size, and what we're going to do is we're going to vertically align it so it's centered. Let's click this one here, and now this is perfectly centered on the card base. And we know that it's also centered this way because of that line. Now we're going to get rid of that line. We don't need it anymore. We just added it there to help us with positioning. So what we can do here is right click on the circle, ungroup it, and you'll notice that we have the circle and the circle line. I'm just going to select the circle line, delete it. Okay, so that's gone. We know this is centered now. I'm going to take the card base down here in layers, hold down shift and select the circle. Then we go to path and hit union. And now we've added that little extension so that on the left-hand side of the front of the card, when you fold it over, it's going to have this little circle cut out. Okay, now one other thing you can do. Now remember, that circle was 3 inches. Let's go back to draw a shape. Hold down your shift key as you draw your circle. And we're going to make this an inset. Okay, so let's keep proportions here. And let's change this to, well, if the original circle is 3 inches, let's take off about 1/4 inch. Let's do 2.75. Okay, there it is. Now, oops, let me grab my selection tool. And you can see when you pop that in there, this is going to be the print to cut element that you're going to bring into your software and do your print to cut, or you can stamp on it, whatever it is. But let's change the color on this. Let's make it green. And then we can go to the card base, change the color on that. I'm just showing you here. Those are not great colors. There we go. Okay, just to differentiate everything. All right, so your circle, this is where you're going to stamp or write or cut. And then we have the card base here. Okay, now when we joined the circle to the card base, it changed the name of that layer to union. We can go ahead and just call it card base. And now what I want to do is I want to group this together. So with the card base selected, hold down shift, grab the scoreline 1, scoreline 2, right click over here and group it. Okay, now it created a new group over here under layers. I'm going to change that to card base. And you can see when you expand that group, we have the card base and the 2 score lines. All right, and then this is your little overlay. And let's see here. Now, you don't see the score marks here because when we created that group, it put them underneath the card base. So we can actually take them and move them up. It's almost like when you were in school and you had the overhead projector with the transparencies. It's kind of how this works. Whatever's on top is what's going to be visible. And a lot of you are actually familiar with that from working in various cutting programs. Okay, so, and again, the green circle is also underneath. We can move that to the front by using layers. There's also a way to do that here. Arrange layer to top, raise layer, so on and so forth. We'll go over that in another video. But so I think I'm going to end it here. Don't forget, you're going to go under File, Export, and on the desktop here, I'm going to call this Gatefold and hit Save. Make sure that the format is SVG if that's what you want it. Hit Save, and then don't forget, if you're going to cut this with a Cricut, hit that little checkbox there that says Design Space Compatible and hit OK, and then you can bring that into your Cricut Design Space for cutting.